give it a few minutes for the people grabbing food so they can come in. So are we online already? Are we good? I do not need water. Are we okay? So you're the, are we online? Oh, the mic is unmuted. No, I'm not using that. So this is off, and then that's on, right? Can you hear me now? Ha. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second She Leads the Way program. We are really excited to have you. For those who are able to join us in person, thank you. And we also have a lot of people joining us virtually today. So, welcome to the program as well. My name is Dr. Lillian Yindodo. I serve as the chair of biomedical sciences for our new College of Osteopathic Medicine that just started. And I'm also the co-chair of the Baptist Health Corps program. I'm a molecular biologist by training and also an epidemiologist. So as a woman in science, it's really important for us to pave way for girls and women like you so that you can be empowered to pursue STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. Despite progress in gender equity, women in STEM are still underrepresented. According to the recent study by Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, in 2028, the gender gap in STEM remains significant, with women making only 28% of the STEM workforce, which is really disturbing. This is why programs such as She Leads the Way is important and dear to my heart. The She in the She Leads the Way is an acronym that stands for Science, Health, Empowerment. This program is designed to motivate, empower girls and young women to explore the world of science and medicine. She Leads the Way program is a part of a large initiative, the Baptist Health Corps program. This program's goal is to increase diversity in healthcare systems. Additional programs such as Black Men in White Coats, STEM summer camp, hands-on labs, mentorship, and among others are part of this big initiative. For more information, I'll provide an email address with the agenda, so you'll be able to email that. And to kick off the program, we'll be having opening remarks from the Baptist University president, Dr. Hopkins, and that will be followed by several female leaders from the university. And then we'll have a presentation from our keynote speaker, Erica Plyby. We'll have a Q&A with Dr. Yeager and Ms. Plyby, and we'll have some fun activities at the end. Dr. Hopkins, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Niandodo. I so appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to share a few opening remarks. And welcome to the folks who are here in the room and those of you who are visiting with us online. I am Hampton Hopkins, and I have the honor to be the president of Baptist Health Sciences University. Let me add my welcome to all of you from Baptist Health Sciences University and from Baptist Memorial Healthcare. For more than 100 years, we have been educating young women in the sciences and in healthcare, leading to an empowering and life-changing career. I'm excited as I look out at those you gathered here and wish that I could have a big screen of all of those who gathered online with us, because I'm seeing a bright future of healthcare all around me, and that's exciting. Last week, I had an opportunity to share some words of inspiration with my high school, or the high school that I graduated from years ago, as an opportunity to provide just some some words for those students who are attending at this point in time. And while considering the thoughts that I might share with them, I found myself reflecting back on my own experience and the hopes and dreams that I had back in those days. I remember being excited and nervous about the future, but I also thought about the unknown adventure ahead of me and the uncertainty I had in my abilities at that time. As I went through and processed some of those thoughts and was thinking about what I would share for those high school students, one phrase kept popping into my head and kept coming back to me, and that was to be open to where you can go. Be open to where you can go. So I say and share with you to follow your dream and seek your opportunities, but to be open-minded about the path that you take. Take time to experience life as it happens and be willing to change direction as needed. I can honestly say to you that I did not anticipate in my life being a university president. It was not in my career goal. But by being open to my path, being aware of the opportunities around me, I've found myself in exactly the spot that I'm supposed to be. So tonight you will hear some important remarks from some exceptional leaders in healthcare and in science. These speakers and this symposium can be the beginning of your journey in the sciences, and I am excited that you have taken this early step forward. Thank you for being here and being with us tonight and being a part of this. And remember, be open to where you can go. Dr. Nyendoto, thank you.
Well, good evening to everyone who's in attendance and as well those who are online. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Williams, and it's my pleasure to serve as Dean of Allied Health here at Baptist Health Sciences University. As well, I am a professor of public health. I'm a social scientist by training, and specifically, I'm a medical anthropologist and an applied medical anthropologist. So that means that I bring all of my curiosity to being able to study and to be able to explore culture and to be able to understand and look at patterns of behavior to be able to help make a difference when it comes to being able to improve health outcomes. And so it's my pleasure to be here with you on this evening. So I was asked to give some words of advice to the young women who are here. And I would say that as a woman of color who is also a scientist, to stay curious and to never let anyone put out your light, that bring all of who you are to your interest in being a researcher and being a scientist. And if you bring all of who you are to your interest in being a researcher and being a scientist, you will make a difference as well. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to be here with you.
Good evening, everyone, both here and online. I am Michelle McDonald. I'm the Dean of General Education and Health Studies, which means I'm over foundational courses, those things that get you ready to go forward into your various different professions. And then I also have biomedical sciences, public health, and health administration in my area. And so I'm excited for you to be here and for you to be online and learn a little bit more about what's available for you and get some ideas of what health science and medical science are all about. I liked what Dr. Hopkins said about being open. I started out my career as a marine biology major, and then I became psychobiology, looking at psychology and biology, and I thought I'd study the brain. Then I went into and I changed my major like 7 times before I found my path. My master's degree is in chemical and life sciences, and so I love human physiology and the chemistry that underlies it. And then for a doctorate, I went into public health and really found a way for those to kind of marry together how the physiology works and how the factors that influence health and wellness overall, which is what we get from public health, come together to make health and wellness in our community. So my advice to you is to be continue to be open and to explore, learn what's out there. There are so many different professions. I think a lot of times I talk to students who are prospective and they think, I want to be a physician or I want to be a nurse. Those are great professions and there's so much to them. So just being a nurse is not just a one thing. There's many different opportunities within nursing. Being a physician is many different things. It's not just a doctor. There's all kinds of ways to go. And then we have so many other professions. I know within our allied health fields, there are many different things. I just talked to someone when I was standing out there who's interested in surgical tech. And there's keep your mind open to the different kinds of professions that are out there. Come to events like this and learn everything that you can so that you can really find the path that's right for you. So excited to have you here this evening. Enjoy the presentation. I believe I have Dr. Vasakis coming after me.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all here tonight. I'm Dr. Audrey Vasakis. I am a cell biologist and a physiologist. I'm actually the Associate Dean for Research at the new College of Osteopathic Medicine that's starting next fall. We've already started with the curriculum. And I'm just excited to be here. I love events like this. I love to see your faces. I love to see the future. I have a 9-year-old daughter and I look at her every day and I'm like, you are the future. And it's true. Okay. So my pieces of advice for you. Okay. First of all, and you may have heard this already, but I just want to remind you that you are stronger and smarter than you think. Say it again to yourself. You are stronger and smarter than you think. Okay. Believe me, I know what it's like out there. You still have to work hard, but you're stronger and smarter than you think. My second piece of advice is don't let anyone tell you no. Okay. Never, because yes, you can. Woo woo, right? Okay. And the third thing, I talk to my mother every day still. I'm so lucky to be able to do that. And she tells me, I'm not kidding you, every single day, especially when I'm doubting myself, not only these things, but she says, remember who's in the driver's seat. So give it up to God. Okay. Thank you all.
All right, well, I'm standing between you and your speaker, so we're very excited. I'm going to have Dr. Nindodo come up and introduce her. I'm Dr. Brianna Yeager. I am the Chair of Health Administration and Public Health here at Baptist. I am actually a health economist by training, and so I really look at the business side and the dollar side of healthcare, and remember that it's 1/6 of the economy. So my advice to you is that there's a place for you, and it's up to you to find it. So today you might be saying, I want to be a physician, and that's an awesome profession. Or you might be saying, I want to be a respiratory therapist, and that's an awesome profession. Or you might be saying, I want to work in the business office. That's an awesome profession. You want to find what is your profession and make it your own. So what I will tell you is find your way to love to learn. That is the thing that will get you through. Keep finding that way to love to learn because you never stop. Especially in healthcare, we learn new things every day. And I'm going to bring Dr. Nindodo up to introduce our speaker, and we are so excited to have her here.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Erica Plyby, founder and CEO of MedHall. Erica is a clinical informatic consultant turned technology entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in health informatic technology, acute patient care, pharmacy, and oncology. Erica spent 10 years developing and implementing large and small scale solutions in settings varying from one doctor practice to 1,000+ bed hospitals for some of the biggest names in healthcare, including Epic Systems, Center, Flatiron Health, and St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Deeply rooted in a community that is drastically affected by chronic illness, Erica continuously strives to improve patient outcome in low-income and rural communities. After working with multiple health systems and noticing various social barriers that exist, Erica founded MedHall, an end-to-end platform for finding and scheduling transportation for vulnerable patient population. To date, Erica and MedHall have been recognized by Forbes, Essence Magazine, Google, and NPR. Erica has raised over 2.5 million in venture capital for MedHall from notable institutions, investors including Innova Memphis, Morgan Stanley, Citibank, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, Silicon Valley, Social Venture Fund, making her one of the few Black women in history to raise 1 million in venture capital. Very impressive. Erica is a proud native of Greenwood, Mississippi. She's a graduate of University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she earned a Bachelor of Science in Biology with a pre-med concentration. Erica is a member of the American College of Health Executives, Health Information Management System Society, and National Association of Health Services Executives, where she has previously served as secretary and chaired the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee Scholarship Committee for several years. Without further ado, let us welcome Erica Plybee. Erica?
Good evening, everyone. Before I start, I just wanted to say I'm really excited to be in this building. When I first came to Memphis almost 10 years ago now, my first role was at Memphis Bioworks. So if anybody is familiar with the history of this building, it used to be Memphis Bioworks. And so this is a really full circle moment because I didn't realize that the auditorium was in here. So it's really great to be here. But growing up in Greenwood, Mississippi, I began my life with very, very humble beginnings. But I always had a feeling that there was a grand plan for me, a plan that would take me far from home, but allowing me to explore the world, then return to make a lasting impact in the Mississippi Delta. I had dreams as diverse as they were ambitious. I aspired to be a ballerina, a model, a gymnast, a corporate lawyer, which I'd assumed then would allow me to be the first African-American, well, actually the first female president of the United States. It was a world filled with boundless possibilities, and that was primarily due to my mom, who told me I could be absolutely whatever it was that I wanted to be. Life, however, has a way of leading us down unexpected paths. My journey carried me from Mississippi to places like Madison, Wisconsin, Washington, D.C., South Florida, Tucson, Arizona, and then finally here to Memphis. And it was here in Memphis that I found my true calling as a fixer, which ended up turning into an entrepreneur, specifically in the healthcare technology space. So today I stand before you not as a ballerina or a lawyer, and not as the first female president of the United States, even though my son still tells me that there's still time. But unfortunately, I'm no longer interested at this time. But as someone who's learned valuable lessons along the way. So I'm here to share my journey and 3 powerful lessons that I believe are essential for, honestly, for everyone. And these lessons are about being an independent thinker, learning to love making mistakes, and always being yourself. So I want to share a little bit of my journey and explore how these lessons have shaped my life and my journey as now an entrepreneur. So I'm as Dr. Lillian shared, I'm from Greenwood, Mississippi, and the Mississippi Delta specifically. And I was raised by my mom, my grandma, my grandfather, and with my brothers. And I was just obsessed with Mississippi. I loved it. I loved being outside. I loved all the open space. But I knew that there were some challenges, and I knew that there were a lack of resources that I couldn't quite put my finger on it because I didn't know what exactly we were missing. But I watched TV a lot. I watched a lot of documentaries. And so I knew that there were things that we did not have in the Delta that other folks across the country may have had, or the world may have had access to. I was also very obsessed with school. I was always obsessed with school. I was always obsessed with information. So I was that perfect attendance student. I got A's on everything, which I'll tell you how that turned out later in life. But when I was younger, I was completely obsessed with school. And most of all, I loved spending time with my grandmother, who ultimately served as my inspiration for going into healthcare because she was a type 2 diabetic. And then later on in my life, in my later teens, she became a double leg amputee. And so with with being obsessed with school, I had a couple of paths for my life. So I knew that I probably wasn't going to end up being a gymnast or a model or a figure skater, all the things. But I was like dead set on being a corporate lawyer and then ultimately the first female president. And so from 5th grade to 9th grade, I was on the path of what I thought would be, to go to law school. And then something changed in 9th grade when I took biology the spring semester of my 9th grade year. And I absolutely fell in love with biology. And I still am very much in love with biology today. And my biology teacher came to me and she said, "Have you thought about being a doctor?" And I said, "Absolutely not, because I am terrified of blood and I'm terrified of vomit." So she said, have you thought about being a pharmacist?" And I was like, "Well, that's like the old guy behind the counter at Eckerd's. Eckerd's was our pharmacy at the time." And she was like, "Well, it doesn't have to be a guy and they don't have to be old, but have you thought about it?" And I was like, "Well, actually, I didn't think about it that much." And so I spent the majority of my high school career and my college career studying various realms of pharmacy. Once again, like when I am really interested in something, I become obsessed with it. So all of my papers that I had to write, all of my projects that I did, regardless of what class it was for, I wrote it on some area of pharmacy, whether it was pharmacy and toxicology, poison control pharmacy, nuclear pharmacy, inpatient pharmacy, outpatient pharmacy, ambulatory, all the things. And so I went into college as a biology pre-med major with the hopes of going into pharmacy school. And so I went to the University of Wisconsin, Madison. Some of you may be thinking, why would you leave Mississippi and go all the way across to the north part of the country where it's so cold and leave Mississippi? Well, I thought at that time, I really wanted to get out and explore the rest of the world and once again, get as many resources as I could to bring back home. That's always been my mindset. And so I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. My dad also lived in Wisconsin at the time. I applied to all of the Ivy Leagues because once again, I was a top A student. So I'm like, of course they'll let me into Harvard. Of course they'll let me into Yale and Stanford or whatever. I applied to the majority of those schools and I did get in, but I chose Wisconsin, because my family was there. So I felt that I would need support. And they also had a really great pharmacy school. They were one of the top 10 pharmacy schools in the country at that time. So University of Wisconsin, amazing campus, phenomenal school, and it still is today. But something about Wisconsin was that it had so many resources, and I wasn't used to that. I didn't know how to use those resources. It was also an extremely challenging academic environment. So much so that my grades, my first year and a half of undergrad were terrible. And mind you, I'm an all-A student, perfect attendance, Patty, as I used to call myself. And here I was getting C's, D's, and even F's. And so I was ultimately crushed. And I didn't really know how to navigate that because I was always used to getting all A's. And outside of that, the schools that I come from in Mississippi did not have a lot of resources. And so this kind of takes me into my first point about being an independent thinker. And dismantling misinformation. I remember friends telling me, like, if you have bad grades, it's just because you just need to go back home. Like that school isn't made for you. I even had somebody tell me that school was for white people. It wasn't that college was not for Black people, which obviously wasn't true. And so I said, I was surprised that nobody had recommended that I go talk to my advisor and go ask for help. And so I said, you know what? I know all of these people are telling me these things, but I'm actually going to go to my advisor, talk to them, tell them the real deal. Like, hey, I'm really struggling. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm working a lot because even though my tuition was paid, like fully paid, we still had housing, food, all the other things. And so that's exactly what I did. I went to my advisor. I went to one of the deans at the school, which was the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, to let them know that I was having a really hard time. And my college experience changed completely from there. Not only did I get the support that I needed, but I also got this community of other students who were struggling as well. And so we oftentimes suffer in silence because we think that, nobody else is experiencing what we're experiencing. And as soon as we speak up, in most cases, as soon as we speak up, we'll often find that there are other people that have these same challenges as well. And so that was a really huge eye opener for me. But I did want to share an area, though, something funny that happened in undergrad when because once this happened, I was kind of like on this kick, like and I'm going to be super honest and super vulnerable. And I remember I was studying for a pharmacology exam, and I was also working 30 to 40 hours a week, which is a lot for an undergraduate student. Highly don't recommend. And I overslept. The exam was at 11 a.m. I woke up at 11:27. I'll never forget that. And I thought, like, should I just, should I lie and say, oh, someone passed away or I'm sick or like whatever, because those were the excuses that college students shared at that time. And I thought, no, Erica, like those days are over. You're being honest, you're having integrity. And he may really respect that you told the truth. He did not, he didn't care. But he did say, he didn't give me an F, which was great, but he did say, you overslept. I had students whose grandparents passed away and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, that's probably not true. But he said, you know what, you can take the exam, but the highest grade that you can get is a BC, which is a B minus at our university. And so I went in, took the exam, and I ended up getting a BC on the exam. And so I ended up getting like a B out of the class. But that was also very eye-opening and very freeing for me. And from then on, literally, that was like 16, 17 years ago now. From then on, I've been obsessed with telling the truth, being vulnerable. And for the most part, it actually works out. In this case, it worked out slightly, but for the most part, it'll definitely work out. And so in another area that I wanted to talk about being an independent thinker is in today's world where we have access to so much information, we always want to think about the source that information comes from. Something that I've been obsessed with since I was younger was the truth. And so, and that a lot of that comes from my mom. She would often say, well, how do you know that? Or did you verify that for yourself? Like from a very, very young age, she just drilled that into my brain. And that has been something that has carried me through my career. Because if I had listened to my friends or counterparts at that time and say, oh, they're not going to help you or whatever, I would have failed out of school or left or, whatever. But instead, I went to go find out for myself. And so that's something I always want to a point that I always want to share. And that has happened a couple times throughout my journey, not only in school, but even when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to work at a restaurant. And it was my very first job. And it was at a restaurant that was deemed as like a whites only restaurant in Mississippi. Yes, those were around in the early 2000s. And I remember saying that I wanted to work there because I could make decent money there. I didn't have to work all these like really strange hours or anything like that. And when people tell me no, or they tell me they don't think I can do something, that's like all the fuel that I need. I'm like, watch this, hold on. And so, of course, most folks said, you can't work there. They're not going to let you work there, whatever that meant. And I just said, okay. And went up, talked to the manager. In 2 weeks, I was working there. And so I have a lot of, that's a story that tracks throughout my life, throughout my career. The same way that I ended up in healthcare technology as well. And I'll get to that story in a second, but I just wanted to hone in on the being an independent thinker, as well as the learning to love mistakes. I think sometimes, especially as women, we're very afraid to fail, very afraid to make mistakes, but we'll never learn and we'll definitely never move forward. One of the things that I love to do, I love to try new things, even if there's like a high failure rate, especially like starting a startup company. I think it's like a 99 point something % rate that startups fail. But I know that through failure that a lot of lessons come. And so I graduated from Wisconsin, moved to Washington, D.C. And at that time, I was still studying for my PCAT because I thought I was still going to go to pharmacy school. And I was working for a pharmacy within Inova Health System. And Inova was about to implement Epic, which some of you guys at Baptist may be familiar with. I had a lot of experience with Epic because Epic is headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin, where I went to undergrad. And so the Epic team was looking for folks to leave their clinical posts to come over to the informatics department so that they could help with the implementation. And I thought, oh, this could be cool. I could improve my resume before pharmacy school and apply to pharmacy school after like a year of working on this informatics team. That obviously did not happen, but I left the pharmacy, went over to informatics, once again fell in love, I led the implementations for the pharmacy and oncology modules for 5 hospitals and 92 clinics at Inova Health System, and once again became obsessed. So at the age of 23, 24, I became an independent consultant for both Epic and Cerner. When I think back on it, that was very crazy because being an independent consultant is very hard to do because you have to find your own projects, you set your own like pay rates and like all of that. And back then I was so confident. I don't know why, but I was so confident. And when I would tell people that I was an independent consultant, they were like, what? Because everybody else was almost twice my age. But once again, I had a mom who told me that I could be anything that I wanted to be, and I believed it. And so during the time that I was consulting for Epic, I was recruited to a technology company based in New York. And the founders of that company had raised $300 million to start and grow the company. I never heard of that before. I never heard of venture capital. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me. And I was only there for a short time because I got very tired of traveling. I was traveling maybe 250 nights a year. And so I then was then recruited to a role here in Memphis, actually at Memphis Bioworks. And that was how I ended up here. And so throughout the course of that journey, I decided not to go to pharmacy school because I wanted to continue to marry my passion with technology for solving a problem in healthcare. And so after I had worked for Memphis Bioworks, then worked at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, this problem of transportation kept coming up. This theme of transportation kept coming up. And I was wondering why nobody was solely focused on transportation. It doesn't live anywhere specifically in a hospital or within a health system. And so when I found out that all of these challenges existed, I thought, hey, I could create a platform and create a platform that could help these healthcare providers find this transportation that was very challenging for them to find. They couldn't easily find wheelchair ride providers or stretcher ride providers. And so, and they also didn't have a place to document that in one place. And I was like, oh, whatever, we could, find something and implement it, and then that'll be the end of it. I have no interest in being an entrepreneur. I always said I never wanted to be an entrepreneur because my dad's an entrepreneur. I thought it was too stressful. And I thought it was too stressful. And I was just not interested in it. So I thought I would build out this initiative just solely for a few hospitals in Memphis and then kind of keep it moving with my day-to-day in informatics. And that didn't happen. And so as you can kind of see, there's this theme of like, I'm pushed into a space and then I end up being there. Definitely with some challenges, but it for some reason, it always ends up working out. So I decided to found what I thought would be an initiative. I founded that as a company in 2017. We are a venture-backed company, which means that we raise venture capital. What is venture capital? Venture capital is investment dollars that an investor invests in a company, but they get equity or ownership in return. Only 1% of businesses, regardless of who they are founded by in the country, are venture backed. And Black women only raise 0.004% of venture capital. So it is very uncommon for a Black woman, especially a Black woman solo founder, to raise venture capital. And even though those statistics exist, I don't pay attention to them. A lot of people ask me, you're a Black woman, you're a woman, how do you push past the statistics and work in this space that is not created for you at all? I just say I just do. I just don't look at the statistics, because if I do, I'll let them kind of take over me. So I actually don't pay attention to any of the articles that come out that talk about how women are discriminated against and all of this kind of stuff. I just don't pay attention to it. And it's kind of delusional a little bit. Maybe I know a lot of folks, especially Gen Z folks, are saying delulu a lot, but you kind of have to be, because if you go into these rooms and you're already defeated, folks can smell that immediately. So you go in with the confidence, you know that you're supposed to be there, you know that you deserve to be there and you're worthy to be there. And that's how I've gotten through a lot of the challenges that I've seen. It is still very difficult. And that is one of the biggest challenges of my life, is starting my company. I say my top 3 challenges were college, becoming a mom for the first time, and then also starting my company. And a theme across all of those three challenges was that I asked for help. I learned how to ask for help, and I asked for help. And that doesn't sound that monumental, but it makes a really big difference when you ask for help. We weren't created humans. We weren't created to just walk this path of life alone, without any assistance from anybody. And most of the people that you see are successful, probably all of the people, I can't say all, but most of the people ask for help. They have groups, they have networks of people that are there to help them. And so as I think about my journey, and I'll go ahead and wrap this down. As I think about my journey, the three things that have gotten me here are A, being an independent thinker. So thinking for myself, verifying information for myself. 2, learning to love making mistakes and embracing failure is the only way that we'll be able to learn and move forward. And then always being myself. I show up as myself. Some people love it, some people don't. And that's okay. I mean, it is what it is. I tell my son the same thing all the time. We aren't meant to please everybody. I remember when I first started the company, I didn't want to be called the CEO, because when I saw a CEO, I didn't think about me. I didn't think about, because I never really seen a Black woman CEO. And I thought that CEOs had to be this like super big, bright character, doing flips on stages and extremely charismatic. And that just wasn't me. I didn't have any interest in that. I'm very reserved. But I realized that CEOs come in all different shapes, sizes, personalities, colors. And I've gotten a lot farther by just being myself. And by being ourselves, we'll be able to find people who want to be in company of us. Our people are always out there. So just be yourself. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, I think we should give her another round of applause. So we asked folks when they registered to submit some questions, and you guys did not disappoint. The Mid-South is definitely a very curious bunch, and we're appreciative. So I'm going to ask you a couple of these questions, and there's no test, I promise. We did have several folks kind of ask about when you knew. You found your career, you knew this is what you wanted to do. Can you tell us a little more about those moments, those ahas that motivate you, that put you on that place where you're like, this is where I'm supposed to be, as the CEO and founder of MedHall?
Yeah, well, when I knew, this is always an interesting question, because I kept getting pulled into the direction. And I'll share a little bit more about that. For MedHall specifically, there was a competition, a business plan competition almost 7 years ago now, called the Memphis Medical District Opportunity Challenge. And it was a partnership between the Memphis Medical District and Epicenter Memphis. And the purpose of the competition was to find an entrepreneur or entrepreneurs who could build a solution for one of the hospital's top 3 pain points. So several of the healthcare organizations and the medical district came together. They said, hey, these are our top 3 pain points. We want to find an innovator or entrepreneur around these 3 pain points. And so transportation management was one of them. The problem was that healthcare providers could not find an easy way to find transportation for patients with complex needs, wheelchair-bound patients, low-income patients, elderly patients, patients in rural communities, as well as they did not have a platform to document all of that information. And so I had already had some ideas rolling around in my head anyway, because I had seen some of the efforts that some of the hospitals were launching. And so when this competition was announced, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, but nope, don't want to be an entrepreneur, so not interested. And I just scrolled past the email. And then a couple folks would see me and they would tell me about the competition, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's great. I hope they get some great entrepreneurs to participate. And then I remember the competition deadline got extended, and I was like, okay, is this a sign? Maybe, whatever. I'll just submit an idea, not a big deal, whatever. So I submitted an idea. We got selected as one of the finalists. And by being a finalist, we got to meet with several healthcare leaders like CEOs, CFOs, directors of various departments across some of the health organizations in Memphis to help us really understand the problem that they were facing. And with that information, we were then able to go out and build out like our like the initial idea or the initial business plan. And so I presented our final business plan to these groups of healthcare executives, and we got selected. We won, and I couldn't believe it. We got, I think, like $20,000 check. We did not have a business at all, and so I was not used to the idea of people investing in something that's still an idea, even though it is a very common thing. I wasn't used to it, and so I thought at that time, well, hey, I'll build this tool for Memphis. But that's it. I'll go back to my regular, like, day to day. I'm not interested in being an entrepreneur. I literally said that so many times. And I still kept getting for like the universe just kept pushing me into this direction. And maybe about 7 months later, after the competition, I filed the entity to become an actual company and just kind of went all in then. And so I would say that how I knew there were several signs. I just ignored them on purpose because I desperately didn't want to be an entrepreneur. But I am a woman of faith, and I had a lot of conversations with God and asked, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And I saw all of these signs pushing me into this direction, and I just had a really strong passion for solving that problem. And so that is also another way that you knew, like, if you can't sleep, or if you're waking up out of your sleep because you really want to solve this problem, or you really want to solve this thing or do this thing.
Awesome. Thank you. I think it leads nicely into our next question, which is really, we gave our tip for success. What are your tips for success for these young folks, and some maybe not so young, that are looking at healthcare as their next adventure?
Yeah, I think I would have the same tip, whether it's healthcare or outside of healthcare. So obviously the three things that I mentioned before, being an independent thinker, that is one of my like number one tips, being an independent thinker. But for healthcare specifically, I would definitely say having integrity, being compassionate, and being extremely determined. There are a lot of very hard problems in healthcare. And outside of that, people come to us in their most vulnerable moments. It doesn't matter how wealthy they are or who they are. When folks come to the doctor or to the hospital, it's usually in a very, very vulnerable moment, and we really need strong leaders to interact with those patients. So I would definitely say integrity, making sure that we're doing the right thing when no one is looking, because people are always looking, even though we think that they're not looking. Being compassionate and having empathy toward our patients, and I would say also being perseverant, being determined, because it's a lot of hard problems, a lot of challenges, and some very challenging days in healthcare, and so we have to be able to keep going.
Thank you. I very much agree with you there, and I'm going to ask you about those challenges and ask you, what do you think was the most impactful challenge or obstacle or thing that was like, you faced it, you got through it, you persisted through it, but what was it that was that kind of key moment?
Just one?
Just one.
I would say I'll say one that I got through, and then one that I'm still going through, because I think in life we're always going through challenges. I would definitely say the one that I got through that was probably the most impactful was during college, because that was my very first time, as an 18, 19-year-old, learning how to do these things that I had never known how. Like, I never knew how to ask for help. I didn't even know what help to ask for. I didn't know how to explain what I was going through. And I met, I came against a lot of people who were not as nice, who were just like, oh, just quit your job. And I'm like, well, how does how does that work? Like, you know, you're working too much, quit your job, or ask your parents for more support, you know, or people who just really didn't understand what I was going through. And that was a very new problem for me, because even though both of my parents had gone to college, their experiences were extremely different than mine. And so I didn't really know how to ask for help. And so that was a journey that I kind of had to figure out completely by myself. And so that was probably the hardest. The second hardest was becoming a mom, and look at you guys just saying becoming a mom and managing everything that comes with a career. When I had him, I was a consultant when I was pregnant, and I traveled up until I was 34 weeks pregnant, almost every week. Yeah. And maybe because I always attribute it to the weather in Arizona. It's so nice. It's so sunny. Like, I had the most beautiful pregnancy being in Arizona the majority of the time, because it was just great. But once he got here, and then managing like childcare and not really having support close by, our parents live 2 hours away. I was like, how are people doing this? And like, not a lot of people talk about it either. Not a lot of moms or dads talk about life, like, you know, with kids. And then every phase is different. You know, once they, like, you feel like you get something down, and then boop, they start school. And then that's a whole different, like, you know, whole different schedule, all of that. And once again, I've been able to get through. I still think that I'm dealing with challenges, but I've been able to get through by asking for help, or asking other moms like Anne Marie, like how they get through certain things. And I think moms, or even aspiring moms, we have to build our communities around us, and look for support. So.
As a fellow boy mom, I'm gonna tell you, yeah, I hear that. And it leads nicely. See, she's doing such a good job of leading into these questions that you all asked. This is wonderful. It's almost like we planned this. We did not. You know, there were a lot of different questions about kind of the unique experiences and challenge that women face, especially Black women in healthcare and STEM. And I'm a healthcare economist, and I can tell you we're also a little bit like unicorns. You know, there's not a lot of us, and it's, you know, it's one of those things that it's a space that's predominantly dominated by men, and it's very different to be the only woman in the room, to be the only Black woman in the room. I would imagine that there's, you know, some unique challenges that might occur. And they asked about things like balancing work and family and faith, and feeling qualified to be in that space, feeling worthy. Because when you walk in and you're it's a little intimidating. So what advice would you give, or what would you tell those of us that are in the room here about owning that worth?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the worth is already there. You deserve to be in every single room that you go in, and just walking in with that energy. What I did in my earlier days, because I was very intimidated by that, I would make sure that I was very, very prepared to be in that room. Some folks like that advice, some folks do not. But because I was still really young and still like new to that career, I wanted to make sure that, you know, I had my information down. I was on my P's and Q's. And that gave me even more confidence to walk into those rooms. And then certain things like listening to your favorite like hype song. Like, if you have a song that just like really pumps you up, listen to that before you go. I still do that, like before board meetings and stuff like that. Because people can tell, like when you walk into a room and folks look at you, they can tell if you feel like you should be in that room. So even though I'm saying like walk into the room and own it, it definitely makes a big difference. And that's what men do. No offense, men, but like a lot of the time men just have this level of confidence, even if they don't even know what they're doing. They have this level of confidence that women who actually do know what they're doing don't even have. So I just say really making sure that you sorry men, but really making sure that you, on top of your P's and Q's, whatever it is, you're prepared to walk into that room and just walk in. Another area is that that I shared, a lot of the like sad, depressing articles about women, I just don't read those. I'm a very empathetic person, and if I soak all of that in, it'll really impact how I show up in those spaces. And so, what I focus on are the things that really motivate me. So, how well my company is doing, how great the investors are that we currently have, how much I know, the impact that we've been able to have. And that's what gives me the confidence to walk through those rooms. So don't feel bad if you're like, oh, I can't read this, it's so depressing. It is depressing. And so I don't if I read half of this stuff, I wouldn't even show up. And so that's why and I'm not saying ignore it as if it doesn't exist, because we'd have to be aware, but we also can't always bog ourselves down with all of the depressing metrics and statistics, because it'll just be very challenging for us to show up. So
I think that's pretty sage advice, and we're changing those statistics today, so they're not going to be the same forever. The last question we had, and then I know we will going on to appetizers and more snacks and a fun activity, is about working in the rural space. And we have two of our, well, I guess technically three of our partners that serve a lot of rural hospitals, Hello Baptist Leak and Baptist NEA and Baptist Jackson. What is unique that you have found about working in the rural space that are lessons we could learn, especially because some of us that will be where we are in a few short years?
I would say first, knowing that every rural community is different. We always get questions about whether or not we do work in like rural Utah and Montana and things like that. And those rural communities are very different than rural communities in Mississippi and Tennessee. So I would say that first, that every rural community is different. What we were able to do, at least with our work in Memphis and Atlanta, Birmingham, et cetera, in those metropolitan areas is very different than what we're able to do in the rural communities. So for example, our company, rides can be booked through our platform if they're within 75 miles of city center, of a medium or major city center. We implemented a program in talking about failure, because I love to talk about failure, but we implemented a beta program in which we would look at delivering transport up to 200 miles from city centers, so very much into rural communities. And that failed tremendously. We ran that pilot for like 6 months, didn't work out. So we were like, we have to do some more work until we can implement this. The problem was that the transportation providers were usually smaller companies, and to be able to transport a patient 5 hours out, that means that their van was gone for 5 hours and could not transport any other folks. And that was too hard on some of the companies. And so what we've looked at for some of our rural communities is a hub and spoke model. So training folks within those communities, training them to be owners of small transportation companies, not having a large fleet of vehicles, but 1 or 2 vehicles. So then that way there are vehicles already in these communities, so that folks don't have to leave Memphis, go all the way to, Jackson or Covington or Union City or whatever, and then come all the way back. They already have transportation resources in those areas. So I would say, to make that, I guess, more universal, I would say looking within that community to see what resources currently exist and what could possibly exist. There are people that already live there, people who are already on the ground. Are there businesses that could expand their current business to add additional services, or are there people that could start up new businesses with the appropriate resources and training? So that's one of the areas of advice, I guess I could mention. Yeah.
Awesome. I think that really speaks to the, not only do you have investors, but you're investing too, which is something we very much believe in Baptist, is that the idea of being always willing to serve and finding those ways. Well, that actually is our last question. Is there any questions from the audience, and I know our online chat is a little delayed. Yes, ma'am.
Journey I still don't like talking about my failures. People want to know about it, but you just seem like very comfortable. And you was like, I want to talk about it. I'm happy about it. And I'm like, not me. I don't want to fail. And I want it to be like perfect, but that's not realistic, especially in healthcare. So how have you become so comfortable with not only talking about failure, but embracing it, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing to your point, yeah, throw the perfectionism, throw it out the window. And I learned that by becoming a mom, because I thought, have your perfect schedule and your perfect this, and kids are like, no ma'am. So I learned that a lot with him, but then I also saw how heavy it was to try to carry around that perfectionism, especially when nobody else is perfect. And then you think about it, before you go into whatever that situation is, think about, if I fail at this, what is the worst that could happen? So if you did fail at something, like did somebody, well, people can die in y'all's realm. I do understand that. But if you do get a bad grade, okay, what's the worst that could happen? Yes. I mean, the worst that could happen is that maybe you might have to take the class over, which, yes, nobody wants to do that. But if you have to take the class over, then what happens after that? You take the class over, do a little bit better, and then you go on. You don't want to get stuck. You don't want the failure or the feeling of failure to completely take over you so that you're not doing anything, because that's what happened to me when I was a lot younger. I didn't want to fail, so I just didn't even do it, because I'm like, nope, I'm scared to fail. Even if I might not fail, but even if I'm scared to fail, I just don't even want to do the thing, because if I fail X, I didn't even know what was going to happen. So I would say one of the biggest ways to take all the pressure off of failing is think about, how, if I do fail, what happens? Or even starting off like very low tier, doing something that's very, very low tier. So if you do fail, it's not that big of a deal. So like, go play a random game that you don't know how to play. And then when you fail, it's like, oh, okay, whatever. It's not a big deal. And you can build up your failure tolerance from there. For me, I just saw how much pressure it took off of me, and how much anxiety it took. It's so freeing to go in a room and be like, I tried this, didn't work, so now we're gonna, whatever. And my investors, my leaders, whoever, they ended up having more respect for me, because people know that you're gonna fail. We're all gonna fail at something at some point. But the beauty is in how we deal with the failure, and then what do we do next? So like in my updates that I send out to my investors, I'll say, hey, we tried this, it didn't work out, but here's what we're doing next, or here's our mitigation strategy, or like plan, or whatever. So that's really what people want to see. And so if you plan for failure, I mean, it may sound bad to you right now, but plan for failure just in case it happens. But you'll see that it may not happen as much as you think it's going to happen. So.
Do we have any more questions? Awesome.
I didn't want to take over the students, but I am curious to know if you could elaborate a little bit more about how you access the venture capital process, what that looks like for women to be aware of that. And then also, I've had the opportunity to meet some of the members of your team. How on earth did you find out what talent you didn't have and who you needed on your team? Because that's really important. How do you pick your team?
The first question, how I found venture capital, that is not a very straightforward path. I will say it's very, very challenging. What helped us is having a community here in Memphis. I followed a lot of entrepreneurs here in Memphis that had raised venture capital for like 2 or 3 years. Just be around them, be in spaces, go to events that they go to, and also even just talk to investors. Even if I'm not raising money right now, I find investors who invest in our space. So I was looking for healthcare investors that invested in new companies, brand new companies, so companies that didn't have revenue or very, very little revenue. And I would just talk to them, like, what kinds of things do you look for in companies? And most of them, because you're not raising money, most of them will actually talk to you because there is no pressure, because they know that you're not raising money. And so I would definitely say learning from other entrepreneurs who have raised money, and also learning from investors. The second thing is finding the team. In the same way that I talk about failure, I also talk about what gaps I have. I'm very aware of what I do well and what I don't do well. And so that's very important for any leader, whether they're an entrepreneur or not, but to know what gaps you have. I literally write them down. Like if I'm coming up against something and I'm like, I don't understand this well. I know there's somebody on this earth that can do this a lot better and faster than me. I literally write it down, gap, gap, gap. And that helps me find the person that I need. When I first started building out my team, I was open to a remote team. This was pre-COVID. This was way before COVID. And so I posted roles on various freelancer websites. So the person could be based in Memphis, but they didn't have to be. And that was actually how I started building out my team. But I start figuring out which gaps I have and what is the most important skill set to have in the company right then. And then I use those gaps or that list of gaps to start building out job descriptions. And I post them on freelance websites like Upwork, and obviously on our website as well, and bring team members on that way. But of course, I had to raise a certain amount of money before I could bring people on as contractors first, because I couldn't afford like full-time employees back then. And it's just a lot lower pressure to bring on contractors, because if something doesn't work out, then we don't have to keep them on the team, or they may not even want to stay on this team, because being at an early stage company is not for everybody. So, but now we have 14 team members. Only 3 of us are here in Memphis, and the rest of us are spread out everywhere from San Diego to DC.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we should give her another round of applause. So I want to thank everyone for joining us online, and for those of us in the room, we want to thank Baptist Health Sciences University for hosting tonight's event, and Baptist Memorial Healthcare, especially the incomparable Anne Marie and Cynthia from Community Relations, who really are the driving force behind helping us make this a reality. On behalf of my co-chair, Dr. Ndodo, and I, we want to thank you all for being here, and we hope to see you again actually in 2 short weeks, on November the 9th, when we have, and we can take a very big group picture. Yes. Yes, we will do that. And we can't forget about Abby Brand, who is in Mississippi. See, she's holding the fort down everywhere else. And so it's so seamless. We don't even think about it. It's so seamless. She's just that good at her work. So we want to just thank you all for being here, and we hope you have a good rest of your evening, and we hope to see you on November 9th for the 2nd annual Health Career Summit and Expo. This year it's expanded to include Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. We hope you'll join us for another great day, another great event, and you can follow us at Baptist Health Corps for all of the programming that we have. We'd love to have you again, and especially our friends who are online. We'd love to see you in person next time. All right, have a good evening, everyone.